This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham, talking to you, Brian, today about the future of clean energy and how the world is going to change in the next 10 years, because I have plenty of stories. In fact, Brian, this show is so dense that I think I have to talk fast. I think I'm going to have to really talk fast for the rest of the show.
Okay, and then listeners, maybe in their podcast app, some of them have that thing where you can slow it down. To be able to hear it. But then that would defeat the purpose, I guess.
It's a very packed show. I'm just saying, it was a busy week, and there's just a lot to get to. I'm going to start with a story, because something that happened to me on my e-bike. I got passed by another e-bike on the bike path, and it was humiliating.
Oh, yeah.
I felt humiliated. I felt, what am I doing wrong? That's because when you have an e-bike, you pass everybody.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to see a lot of e-bikes. I think this whole pandemic thing has got people e-bike crazy. Another thing is, I had my family in from Winnipeg, and it was the only gathering of any sort I've had all summer, and had them try the e-bike, and man, the smiles on their faces. They were riding it around a field, which is something you don't normally ride a bicycle on because it's hard. And they were laughing and having fun. And of course, the littlest one, my grandniece, was too little to get on my bike, and she was just crying and not happy at all. But one day, girl, you'll get on and enjoy an e-bike. So yes, I've been enjoying the e-bike, but I got passed, and now I have a different outlook on everything. I don't want to be passed again, Brian. I feel like, okay, that's it. I have to go fast now, all the time, fast.
So it's like an e-bike arms race. You just need a bigger e-bike.
Sure, and believe me, they have big e-bikes. They have bikes that, I don't even want to get into it, but they have probably bikes that go highway speed, for God's sake. So I have to ask you about the Elon Musk pig thing, because I know you were watching it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? I have a little clip here.
Let's take a look at the real-time data that's being transmitted from Gertrude's Neuralink implant. So,
I've got people on Facebook saying, that's cruel. How dare you ruin the world like that? What's your point of view on this?
Well, I'm very interested in it. I don't know how far away all this is, but it seems like there's tremendous potential, and they're not the first ones to do brain implants. This has been done before. This has, they have made progress. But I think we got to do it, because there's the possibility of solving so many things like paralysis. So I'm not sure how far away all this is. Like, how long is this going to take? Is this 5 years away, 10 years, 50 years? I have no idea. I think it sort of relates to what we're going to talk about later with Toby Seba and the sort of fake meat revolution. It's like, it seems like it's a different calculus when it's organic like that, when it's, the human brain, or, trying to replicate organic structures like meat. Is that going to work on the same kind of Moore's law of technology? It's not the same as a computer chip. I mean, the brain works similar to a computer chip, but it seems like they've got a much more difficult problem ahead of them.
Oh, yeah. The brain is complicated, believe me. I know, because I have one, and mine is more complicated than most people. So I think this is just the very beginning of this technology. And they're talking about, putting wires in different parts of the brain that connect to this thing. The breakthrough is kind of like the charging and the, you can wirelessly charge it, right? Wirelessly charge your head overnight. So,
yeah, it's the miniaturization seems to be the only kind of new thing they're bringing to the table.
And, let's be frank, Elon's primary goal here is to make us cyborgs, to cut down the time it takes. He says we're cyborgs now. As we read the computer all day, we're basically just a very slow bandwidth of our eyes and our brain comprehending everything, but we're essentially cyborgs now. I know my kids are. And it's just, his primary goal is not to solve paralysis, but I'm sure he's the kind of guy who would want to work on that primarily. But the idea of using a robot, did you see the robot? The robot cuts open your head and plants the thing. And that's half the deal. Like the robot does the surgery. And the idea is for everybody to have one, everyone. And
It has to be a robot because that's the only thing that would be precise enough.
yeah, okay. So that's freaky. The machine that builds the machine, Anyway, summer's over. It's September, Brian. How do you feel about that? You're going back to school, going back to your classes, September 2nd today.
Yeah, I have to start teaching soon, my university classes, and I'm going to do that from here in the bomb shelter. Of course, we're still separate. You're at your house. I'm here in the bomb shelter. So that'll be a new experience. I've had to rejig my studio setup here a bit, so it's for podcasting and now teaching, which is very weird.
Are you going to have an intro theme song to your classes?
Hey.
That would make you
now
stand
you got
out.
something. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, but because they're film classes, I did think that I would maybe have to approach these like Zoom aspect of it, hopefully better than other teachers. Like if you're teaching history or something, it's one thing, but if you're actually teaching a film class and your sound is terrible and your picture is terrible on your Zoom, I think that reflects poorly on the film department. So I'm trying to get some proper lighting, proper sound, and my goal is to have a better looking Zoom class than most people.
Well, you'll have to send us a still picture or something eventually, but I'll bet you anything that there are film professors and TV professors and instructors the world over who have very crappy Zooms.
Yeah.
And, throughout the pandemic, I've been admiring various people and how they approach this, because there is everything we see on TV and even the internet nowadays is a Skype call, is a Zoom call or a Skype call. And, some people have a very awkward pop filter and a podcasting mic, but it doesn't work very well, and it's 20 feet away from their mouth, and it's picking up the room more than anything. And other people have crappy lighting and bad shots, and I've just been sitting back all summer on the couch admiring the good ones and the bad ones. And have you done that? Have you found yourself saying, "Oh, that's a pretty good shot"? I mean, there's a little bit. Some Skype calls that look like there's a satellite truck out front, and some that look like they're on a 56K modem, like there's a wide variety of connections too.
Yeah, and people could theoretically record with a proper camera as opposed to the Skype call. Some are better than others, and I think people have been improving over time, and there's lots of YouTube tutorials, for instance, like how to make your Zoom call look better. So I would encourage everyone to do that. Like a thing like an echoey room, that's kind of the thing I hate the most. People are using the built-in mic on their laptops in an echoey room, and it just sounds terrible. I hate that.
Well, I had a record summer for my rooftop solar. Both July and August came in as a record for me, and in fact, I had probably almost 4 sunny days over the record on August. So that just tells you that it was a hell of a month. And also, I noticed that our rainfall totals were fairly well below average for August. So that's probably one reason why it was a sunny month. But that worked out well for me during the pandemic, having the pool running and the family together and having a good time, because normally we'd be on vacation in August in previous years.
Yeah, I had a record August for solar, which was fun. My July, not quite. I think we talked about that before, but
it seems not that long ago. But yeah, it seems
I know
like yesterday. What the hell? Time is moving so fast. So I've got some feedback to talk about. John says Lumsden, and this is from our show last week, is big news, and glad you included it. It's following in the footsteps of the Cowessess First Nation here in Saskatchewan and their solar and wind battery system, which is small, as I recall, but futuristic, as what I'm thinking. And he's criticizing the city of Regina and the city of Regina City Council, who has done nothing, which is true, although they're talking about it now as regard to solar. So much potential in Regina for solar, although it does go down in the winter, as long as you can store it on the grid. And that's something people really don't understand. I find that even smart people don't understand how solar works. The grid is your battery. Yeah, you're still attached to the grid, and the grid just, the excess that you make in the summer during the day when you're not using it, goes into the grid, and you get credit for that. And that's because batteries are expensive, and it would require even a bigger. How many batteries would it take for you to not be connected to, not connected to the grid, but not having your solar credits reverse? Would it take like 3 Tesla batteries or something?
Oh, at least. And I'd have to put in more panels because my winter production's very poor. I think we talked about that at one point, but I've got a low slope roof, so I have fantastic summer production, but my winter production would probably not be enough to even charge the batteries.
But even just to cover your summer production and not waste it, how many batteries would you need? Like 4 power walls or something?
Yeah, something. It's when it's so uneven like that, you really rely on the grid.
Right. So we had a poll. But first of all, Don says perhaps zero-scaping is more appropriate for those of you in a near desert. He's talking about us here in Saskatchewan and Regina. But lawns are more destructive than natural gardens, of course. Energy saved is significant, water even more so, especially considering chemical runoff. And viva la difference. So, yes, we were talking about how lawnmowers are strangely put out the amount of pollution of a car driving, countless kilometers. So it's quite amazing what in effect. I mean, if you do one thing and you have a lawn and a lawnmower, you could get rid of the lawn. That would be the best thing to do. But yeah. Anyway, people are saying, I was asking people, Brian, about Tesla's stock because we were talking about this on is battery day. And your point of view is that no, Tesla stock will go down. Dawn, I think, was one of our regular listeners thinking it might go down too. I don't think they'll fall. They might even nudge up a bit. But our listeners, 20% said it would go down on battery day. This is September 22nd. 20% said it would go down. 33 said it would stay the same, 33%. And majority, almost 47%, said it was going to go up on battery day. Do you still stand by your claim that battery day will not give a boost to the stock? There won't be anything new in there.
Well, I just felt like it would fall at some point. I don't know if that's before battery day or after battery day, but it's had such an amazing run up. It just seems like that can't go on forever. The long-term trend, I think, is still going to be up, but it is in fact actually down quite a bit today and yesterday.
Is it?
Based on, they announced a funding raise. They're going to create some more stock and dilute the stock a bit and raise $5 billion. So
for the hell of it.
It has come down like, over 10% in the last 2 days. So
really? I didn't know
maybe
that.
Maybe this is the correction here, but it seemed to be the fundraise, the creating $5 billion in new stock seemed to be what triggered that.
So ARK Invest still says it's like going up to $7,000 eventually. That's the bullish people who have been looking at what this all means. See, regular stock market isn't really understanding what Tesla's about. They think they're a car company, and they're looking at the number of cars they're selling and saying, well, it's growing and they're making money. And but the future is with the robotic taxis, that's what it's all about, self-driving and the software that's behind that. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it's hard to predict when that self-driving is going to come and when it's going to be properly regulated, all that sort of thing. But Tesla does seem to have a lead.
Well, I'm going to jump into this then right away since we're talking about it. And Toby Seba, which is a guy he's a futurist in plain terms. He's an academic at a university in California, and he studies disruption. He studies past disruptions and tries to apply those lessons to future disruptions. For example, he says that the convergence of technologies, multiple technologies at price and, say, processing power come together, and then that disrupts, say, Nokia with smartphones from Apple, because the screens became cheap enough, the batteries became big and cheap enough and small enough and light enough, and the processing power was powerful and cheap enough, and the network was there. So smartphones disrupted Nokia, and his observations is that the disruption always comes from the outside. It doesn't come from the incumbents. The incumbents never see the disruption coming. And so he's long applied this for 10 years. He's been applying that to energy and automotive, and saying that by certain years that EVs will reach a certain price point. He's looking at the cost curves, and he's saying, okay, if that keeps going, and it will keep going, it meets this sort of criteria, and then a disruption will happen. And largely what he's saying is that 10x, as he says, disruption comes when something is 10 times cheaper, there's no stopping the disruption. So we're going to talk about food in a second, but he's also interestingly talking about autonomy. And he was asked questions on a podcast recently. You know, and this is a question that I have and you have, is like, what about the autonomy? Like, it's not there yet. We're not seeing it. Elon says a lot's going to happen this year, but blah, 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 it's happened before. So what he's saying, it doesn't matter when the autonomy happens. By 2030, it's going to have happened by then. So if it happens at 2029, everything is going to be so cheap by then for the autonomy portion, like the computers, and everything else, that it's going to happen very rapidly. So if it happens tomorrow, it'll happen slowly. If it happens in 2029, it'll be cheap and it'll be so rapid that, So here's a clip.
It's interesting that a lot of folks consider Twitter or mainstream media and so on as a leading indicator of where technology, of real technology progress, right? You need to look at the actual technology. How quickly is that improving? And if you look at data from Tesla, when they're on autopilot, are already 6 to 9 times safer than human drivers already. Now, it doesn't mean that they're 6 to 9 times safer in all conditions, right? But they are already. So, essentially, look at the progress, how quickly those technologies are evolving or actually accelerating.
Yeah, so I think that what he's saying is that we're underappreciating what's already been accomplished. Yes, cars can't drive themselves, and they're not anywhere near that, but it's happening so fast that you can't not project everything that's happening into 2030. People aren't doing that. It's seems to be against human nature to do that. But if you look at how fast things are going, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think everything he's saying supports the premise of this podcast, which is massive change by 2030. That's kind of what we were thinking when we started it in the beginning of 2020. So, it's impossible to kind of imagine, but if you think of all of these things that we're just at the beginning of, and the food production thing was sort of new to me. That's sort of Tony Seba's new thing, where he thinks that most animal products can be replaced by 2030. Again, that seems a bit more iffy because you're dealing with something other than computer chips. But I think this supports the whole premise of our podcast. The world will be changed and perhaps even fixed by 2030.
Yeah, and there's something. As I know, a lot of our listeners haven't been following Toby Seba. A lot of people in the EV world have. But what he has said so far has turned out to be correct. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean to be this guy who finds a guru on YouTube or somewhere and blindly follows him. I'm not that person. I'm just saying this is up for discussion. So let's have the discussion. And I think he's quite credible, and based on his past productions coming true to the year all the time. So what he's saying about food, the fake meat thing is called precision fermentation, or PF. So precision fermentation is what gives you the enzymes and everything that actually replicate beef. So instead of growing those enzymes in a cow, which is of course very expensive and destructive to the environment, and he's not even looking at the environment. Tony never actually looks at the environment, never talks about the environment, but he did on the clip that I have coming up, because he says that the disruption coming to food and everything else, energy, transportation, and so forth, is going to more than meet the Paris Accord. He said the Paris Accord targets are actually pretty wimpy and small, and that all these things will actually exceed it. I mean, don't tell Greta Thunberg, but one of our sort of things on the show is that, the green technology will help us save the planet. So Tony's going to talk about that in this clip here.
Technology is taking us there a lot faster. Paris Accord it's fairly conservative, actually. I mean, my numbers indicate clearly that by 2030, the only source of energy that is going to make any sense is going to be solar and wind with batteries. in, of course, food via precision fermentation is going to be a lot cheaper. So if all you do is take disruptions in these three sectors, energy, transport, and food, just about 2/3 of all emissions are gone by 2030.
So Tony is saying that precision fermentation used to be very expensive around the year 2000. And it has come down in the same way that solar has since 2000. That it still costs, I don't know, $100 a kilogram or something to make precision fermentation. But it used to cost $100,000 a kilogram 20 years ago. So he's following the cost curve on that, and he doesn't see it stopping. So what happens there is that a fake burger, which is now more expensive, becomes 10 times cheaper than a regular burger. So if you're at McDonald's ordering a Big Mac and you want real meat, you're going to have to pay a big premium, especially if the market is disrupted. Now, he's also saying that this goes beyond just meat, and it goes into eggs and milk. And to my surprise, Brian Stockton, this stuff is already on the market. They have precision fermentation milk and eggs and other things on the market. So what he's saying, what people aren't thinking about is that not only is it going to be significantly cheaper as the cost curve continues to go down towards 2030, we're going to have more options for meat. You're going to have different flavors of meat. You're going to have different nuances that are real meat, but different variations of it, infinite variations of it. It's going to cover everything. It's going to be a lot cheaper to buy milk, and you can have easily without the lactose in it if you don't want it, and so forth. And the meat is also going to be less dangerous because you're not going to have E. coli problems. You're not going to have that danger. So if you eat real meat, you're throwing the dice. And also, just that it's going to be cheaper, better, more varied, and also healthier. It doesn't have to be healthier, but it can be healthier quite easily. So you can take out whatever fat you want and put in whatever fat you want. And so, yeah, safer and healthier. And this is news to me, and it's something to think about and to research more. ThinkX.com, I think, is his website.
So is there anywhere I can buy the fake milk right now?
I haven't got that far. If any of our listeners know, and I'm going to guess that it's expensive right now.
Yeah.
But again, these are cost curves that are just projected to continue to 2030. And at that point, everything's going to be cheaper. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, when autonomy is not going to happen overnight. But once the day autonomy is achieved and the regulation is first approved, let's say Phoenix, nothing is going to be the same after that. Even if it takes 10 years for it to spread around the world, nothing's going to be the same. And that's kind of the way he talks about this, is once that day is reached, then nothing is going to be the same. And yes, he's talking about 40% of land mass is used for livestock in the United States. And a great deal, not all of it, but a great deal of that is going to be suddenly freed up for whatever you want, I guess. Solar panels is one thing. I don't know what else you'd be using all that land. When I drove to the States, like I've said several times, I've been to the States in the South, and I find it fascinating down there. But you drive through desert, and for some reason there is cattle fencing along a desert. And you think, okay, there's a couple of weeds in there, but why? Is there actually cows? Because I've never seen any cows. And I drove for days seeing this desert with virtual desert sometimes, and no cows, but they have this fence up, so all this land is there for livestock, I guess. And yeah, anyway.
Well, I'm just going to say we picked the right decade to do our podcast, I think.
Yeah, if we started 10 years ago, yes, podcasting existed, but no, it'd be a longer haul. Ryan's Movie Corner. You went to see Tenet.
Yeah, thanks for that intro. Yeah, well, you put out a Twitter poll. Should I risk my life and go see this movie? Yeah, so I went to see it. I went to a 9 a.m. show at our local IMAX theater. And as we discussed before, there's only around 13 places in the world that you can see this with a proper IMAX film print. The film was shot like 2/3 on IMAX, the other third on regular 70 millimeter. So that's why I went. I just love our IMAX theater and the fact that we have this in Regina. Yeah, I didn't really like the movie, kind of as I expected. But I went to a 9 a.m. screening, and there was only 8 people in the theater. I was able to sit in the front row. I was way away from everybody. So, yeah, for a 9 a.m. screening, I can totally endorse it. I think it's a safe way to go if you want to go see a movie.
60% of our listeners said you would not enjoy the film, and you're confirming that. Am I correct?
Yes, but it's got 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, so apparently other people like it.
What didn't you like about it?
Well, I mean, it's hard, without getting into spoilers, it's hard to say, but Christopher Nolan's always got these really big ideas, but then he always deals with them in a really kind of a simple, superficial kind of way. So it just doesn't live up to the promise of his concept behind it. It's a spy movie with some science fiction elements, and it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think he wrote it himself, and he really needs to work with a scriptwriter, I think.
That's really harsh.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good stylist. He's a good director. Like, he knows what he's doing. But I think his best film is Memento, which was his first feature. And it's been all downhill since then.
Okay. Well, our listeners also weighed in on whether you would check your Tesla stock during the film. 75% said no. Are they correct?
No, I did check it once. But if I liked the film, I would not have checked it. But because it's 2.5 hours long, so it's like, it got a little boring there for a while.
Oh, tough crowd, man. You're in the 18% on the Rotten Tomatoes who didn't like it, man.
But the IMAX is spectacular. Like, anytime you can see something that's shot on film like that, and it's never digitized, like there's probably a few effects shots that are digitized, but he shoots on film, he processes it, he does a neg cut, and you're seeing a pure film presentation in the biggest film format. Just that part of it is always lots of fun.
Okay, so you don't regret going. Obviously, 8 people in the theater spread out. Were they wearing masks? Did you wear a mask?
Yeah, you're required to wear masks until you're in your seat, because they are still selling popcorn. So you might want to munch on popcorn while you're sitting down. But yeah, everyone was wearing masks.
Did you eat popcorn at 9 a.m.?
No, I did not. I just went without food.
Okay. Well, see, it was because of the risk, or, I mean, it's midday for you, so it wouldn't be out of the question to eat something greasy at that time.
No, afternoon maybe, but 9 a.m., no.
No, that's too early. You start drinking around then, but not...
of course.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to point out an opinion piece that I saw in the Globe and Mail.
Really?
The oil sands fundamentals are dire and stark, and Canada shouldn't spend to revive a dying dream. I don't know if you happen to catch this.
No, I don't have a subscription.
I mean, it's just an op-ed, and it's saying, we shouldn't be propping up the oil industry because it's going down in flames anyway. But there's 3 writers on this opinion piece, and one of them is Ed Whittingham.
Ah, yes.
Is that any relation?
I'm not sure. I don't know. See, he could be my cousin. No, I've come across Ed Whittingham before because he was in the news. Jason Kenney fired him. He was like the green advisor to Notley, and he also heads an institute. So there's 2 of us. There's 2 of us in the family.
Wow.
I actually think I am related to him, but I'm not. I can't. It's a long story. My family never really met up with other family too much for some reason. But I have a half uncle. See, I just found out that my grandmother remarried after her husband died. I didn't know that before. So yeah, that's the part of the family. And also the guy she married was like 7 degrees away from Henry VIII or something in my genealogy thing. So he's like a half uncle or something.
Another story here. You were making fun of this on Twitter. They're considering a Hyperloop for Alberta.
And I know there's people in our community in Saskatchewan and the green community are excited about that. But come on, Brian, it's expensive as hell for a few.
It's probably too expensive, but there is an opportunity, I think, in Canada for some kind of high-speed rail. The Hyperloop, it's probably too expensive, but we have no high-speed rail in Canada, which is a real shame. And it really makes sense for like Alberta and Saskatchewan, because like this Hyperloop story it's between Calgary and Edmonton. So in our 2 provinces, we have these 2 major cities. Like in Manitoba, they only really have Winnipeg, so it's less of an issue here. But some kind of high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary makes a lot of sense, or between Regina and Saskatoon.
No,
I don't think it's going to happen. But we should have some high-speed rail.
You want a high-speed rail between cities the size of New York that are, 5 hours apart. Come on. Regina and Saskatoon, look, what's going to happen in 10 years, and I stand behind this, is that a robotic Tesla will take you to Saskatoon completely powered by solar. I can't guarantee the solar because we live in a bit of a backwoods here. But the idea is that will be powered by solar. Now, Brian, I live not far away from a steel mill used to be called IPSCO, is now owned by a German company called Evraz. So occasionally, I don't get a lot of air pollution because the air doesn't quite come from there very often, but I get a lot of noise pollution because they're dropping these giant pipeline pipes around in 3 o'clock in the morning. And they never used to do that, by the way. So there is a plant in Sweden, which is becoming, one of the biggest challenges for meeting Paris and for saving the freaking planet is to deal with things that are not easy to deal with, such as steel mills. And by the way, Toby Seba is saying the era of, and we'll talk about this more in a future show, is talking about the era of extraction and manufacturing being over, that we're not going to consume iron so much anymore. We're going to reuse things and everything's going to be local. And by the way, he has a very negative view of how this could affect political things, like the changing world of us becoming decentralized could actually destabilize political things. Example being California. If California doesn't need oil or anything else from anyone else, is it really going to stick around always and be that way? Anyway, something is cement production and steel production all make a lot of greenhouse gases. So one of the proposed things for steel is not using coke coal, so a certain kind of coal for making steel, and releasing a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, is to use hydrogen. And that hydrogen would hopefully be made not by natural gas as it is now, but by completely green energy in the future, because that technology is becoming improved and cheaper. So I have here a little clip from what's going on in Sweden.
Teaming up with renewable giant Vattenfall and iron ore producer LKAB, SSAB's hybrid project is building a pilot plant for the world's first fossil fuel-free steel.
Over time, we see that power systems will decarbonize and electricity turn into hydrogen, but we need to refine that process to make it cost-efficient, to make the transition of this industry desirable rather than necessary.
The world's first fossil fuel-free steel products are not due to hit the market until 2026. But in this small white winter wonderland, it already feels like a green revolution is underway.
So hopefully, Brian, we'll start to see that technology proven, and hopefully by 2030, we'll start to see a transition over the 20 years that follow 2030. That's what I think. What do you think?
Well, yeah, no, that's quite fascinating. And it brings me to the next story I had here, which was, this is on Electrek. They did a study. The Tesla Model 3 emits 65% less lifetime emissions than a Mercedes-Benz C-Class. So this is something that anti-EV advocates often bring up, that EVs still have a carbon footprint, and that is true. But this study proves that it's 65% less. And that's for the longer range Model 3. So the one I have should be even better than that in terms of a carbon footprint, which is one of the reasons I chose that one. It's like the smaller the battery, the smaller your carbon footprint, the more efficient everything is. But the other thing the study points out is that this is just getting better in things like, carbon-free steel production. Well, once that comes online, then the carbon footprint of EVs just keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Now, from that story, there was something like 6 things that studies had misinterpreted in the past. And I can't remember them all, but one of them...
Yeah, I have the list here if you'd like to hear them.
Sure.
They have exaggerated the greenhouse gas emissions of battery production. This is what they've done in the past studies. They've underestimated battery lifetime. They've assumed that electricity will not be getting cleaner over the lifetime of a car, when in fact it does. And they use laboratory tests paid for by the manufacturers, which is never a good idea. They exclude or downplay fuel production emissions, and they ignore the larger system, whatever that means. But yeah, previous studies have been flawed because they just didn't take everything about the life cycle of both into account.
That's right. And a lot of assumptions are always surround the battery. Like, the battery's going to last 5 years. I mean, that's BS, because my car, for example, is 7.5 years old and it's going strong. And I have a crappy battery. I've not one of the better battery systems I've one of the worst. So Teslas right now, I think Elon was saying, would probably go 500,000 miles on a battery, something like that, which is pretty significant when you look at a car. Cars don't go 500,000 miles. 500,000 miles brings you to a battery level of 70%, and that's considered, unusable. That's not acceptable anymore. Of course, if you've gone 500,000 miles or 800,000 kilometers, which is ridiculous and often 4 times what a car can do, certainly 3 times, then you hand it off to a teenager who doesn't need to go 400 kilometers. They go, 250, and they can go to school, and the car is still being run. And then after that, the battery can have a second life in energy storage. So, and then after that, it's recycled. And they're making progress on recycling batteries all the time. And it's really not that bad right now, but it's only going to get better. So they're going to be able to recycle everything in that battery, or almost everything. So
yeah, I guess that relates to what you're saying about Toby Seba. There will be less extraction in the future because, all of these battery components can be recycled and a lot of the stuff recovered.
So I think that the battery day is significant in that, because we're talking about a 1 million mile battery now. I mean, that's been out there. It's pretty public. It's a question of, is it September 22nd and they'll start making them right away, or is it 2 years from now? But a 1 million mile battery is huge because it changes the economics of so many things, including robotaxis. And that's one reason why electrified robotaxis will be cheaper. And of course, when you put something in grid storage that lasts 20 years instead of 10 years, I mean, the economics are just huge. So that's what we're talking about here, is batteries that will currently last 8-10 years in a grid storage will go to 20. And you won't need the technology, you won't need the expertise of installing it and all that. It just sits there for 20 years. So the economics per kilowatt hour of storage and what it does to the grid, is huge. And I don't think people realize that there's a lot of things changing with just the longevity of batteries.
Yeah, and it enables better grid backup with your car. So you'll be able to use your electric car to feed into the grid and store power for your house if the power goes out, that kind of thing. And once it's a 1 million mile battery, there's no issue with the extra cycles that's going to create.
Brian, I'm excited to bring a brand new segment to the show. It's called Elon Musk, Cray or Slay.
Elon Musk, Cray or Slay.
Every once in a while, Elon does something weird, right? I mean, we all agree to that. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I say when that happens, we have this segment called
Elon Musk, Cray or Slay.
And we discuss whether he's crazy or slay.
And slay means good, I guess.
It's what the kids call, when
lingo.
they slay something, when you're slaying something, it's nailing it. It's doing a good job. So yes, I thought the two things rhymed, and that's why I called it that. It's controversial, I know, but our listeners will become used to it. So what has Elon Musk done lately? He has decided to use the external speakers on Tesla vehicles to play two things. One is elevator music, and the other is snake jazz, which is something that comes from Rick and Morty here. There's actually something that goes on for like 3 hours of this on YouTube in case you want to get stoned and listen to it. So is he crazy or is it a good idea?
Is there a third option?
No. Because
I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I mean, it's if it's an option on your car, that's kind of fun, but you'll be able to turn it off. So, it's kind of neither here nor there.
Well, the fart machine is fun, but I mean, that's very personal, right? You got a fireplace on there, which is romance mode. You've got a fart mode.
Yep.
The fireplace will show a picture of a fireplace and blow heat at you, which I think is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't want people in Teslas going around playing snake jazz, or I will start shooting people.
Well, I mean, how do you feel about, like, there's lots of loud exhausts, or like people have weird
I hate
horns
that
play songs and stuff?
But if motorcycles went around playing this, I would be very upset. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It's just, it's funny. Yes, it's funny. It's a pulp culture reference, but
well, it's also, but like the fart mode, it's like, it's a fun thing to use one time, or you're showing somebody the car and hey, look at this guy, and then you never use it again.
It's hard to forget that. It's hard to forget somebody showing you the car and saying, what's snake jazz? Oh, it's when snakes make jazz music. It's from a cartoon. Okay. Well, I'm a Rick and Morty fan, but yeah, I don't know. Do you have another story this week, Brian?
Yeah, I just, world's largest grid storage battery. So we've talked about this before. The previous largest grid storage battery was in Australia. It was put in by Tesla. And now another company has put one even bigger in California, 230 megawatt battery system with even more megawatt hours. Not finding the, but anyway, so California now has the world's largest grid storage battery. Oh, there it is. Yeah, 230 megawatt hours, 230, I don't know. I'm confused, but it's the biggest.
So it's displaced this one in Australia. Australia has a complicated power grid, and thank you very much, so does California. But I remember it's only been around for a couple of years in Australia, and it's saving them millions, like tens and millions. It's like paid for itself in like 2 years. Somehow having this on standby, and just and it can respond so fast, so instantly in milliseconds to needs in the power grid, that it's just saving them. It paid for itself in 2 years, and that's not going to be the case everywhere, but in Australia it was. So I think that the grid in which has had blackouts in California recently, rolling blackouts because they couldn't mismanage the grid. They forgot that they were shutting things down for repair, and So I think this it's good, and isn't it going to be replaced by another Tesla one that's going to be even bigger?
Yeah, there's more under construction. So I mean, we're going to keep seeing records from now till 2030, bigger and bigger grid storage for sure.
So I saw another story on the internet the other day that is Panama cancels order for diesel buses. So they had this giant order for diesel buses, and they're going to purchase 195 electric buses instead. This is another thing that's happening rapidly, sooner than later, is that electric buses are overtaking diesel buses on price, on the cost of ownership. And to my surprise, it's all these Central American and South American countries that are doing it. And we're not doing it here in Canada at the same level. And the perception that I have is that these countries aren't exactly rich. But when they're buying buses, they're always buying electric buses. Do you have any idea why that would be?
I don't, but I assume they just crunched the numbers. I mean, they couldn't afford really to make the wrong decision. So presumably they crunched the numbers and made the right decision.
Well, that's incredible. Like we're such full of largesse here that we waste money left and right and don't think about the long-term implications of things. I mean, when I got an EV, I crunched the numbers and decided, looked at how I would save money. Would actually be a free car in the lifetime. In 5 years, it'll be a free car. And solar panel, same thing. Yes, it's an investment. Not everyone can do it, but I'm not throwing my money away for to take carbon out of the grid. I'm actually, it's a financial advantage to me to do that. So, yeah, Metrobus public transport system has been testing 2 electric buses that it got supplied to it for free by the BYD company. That's the Warren Buffett early investment in 2007 type of thing, Chinese electric company. They also make transport trucks for, I noticed, was it CN or somebody bought a bunch of electric trucks for their cargo station or something.
Yes.
Basically, at ports, you don't want pollution around, so because you have the trucks coming and going constantly, so they're putting a lot of low-range electric semis or equivalents on those things. So yeah, they're making a lot of those, and they decided to cancel an order for 160 new diesel buses and purchase electric buses from BYD instead after testing them. So they're going to spend $35 million to purchase 195 medium-sized electric buses for use in Panama City. Now, we were talking about this last week. How much is an electric bus? Well, these are medium-sized electric buses. They're not small and they're not large. They're medium, and they're $180,000 US.
Oh, that's all.
Each. Yeah, and that's what I thought they were. So yeah, maybe it depends on and they charge in 5 minutes too. Like the little thing comes down on top, little accordion electric thing, and they can charge up significantly in 5 minutes. So that's where we're headed, and by God, that's going to become a lot cheaper and a lot better very quickly. We won't have to wait to 2030 for that one.
That's great.
Brian, it's time for our much-loved segment, and I don't know how to put this other than it's time for the lightning round.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round. The lightning round hits James against Brian in a flurry of headlines from this week's news. Let's begin here now. James Woodingham.
From Forbes, plummeting renewable energy. Battery prices mean China could hit 62% clean power and cut costs by 11% by 2030. That magic year. What do you think?
Well, I would have hoped maybe more aggressive than that, but that's encouraging, I guess.
This is a country that is still building coal plants because their power needs are so incredibly high that, every half day they build a new wind turbine, I think, or something like that. Lucid reveals its insane 500-mile range is achieved on a 113 kilowatt-hour battery pack, Electric says. We might have a new king of efficiency because it's 517 miles, or 832 kilometers of range, on a 113 kilowatt-hour battery pack. So that's 4.58 miles of range per kilowatt-hour. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last week. The more recent news was it did a 9.9 second quarter mile. So it's now threatening to be faster than Tesla's offerings, as well as longer range. So this is exciting. Somebody has finally come up to challenge on range and performance.
Certainly, 832 kilometers is as much as anyone needs. I mean, you could even drive to Calgary at highway speed on that. And I was reading something about the highway speed is actually, or the highway efficiency is actually pretty good too.
Okay.
So, but it is a luxury car. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's going to be quite expensive, like $150,000.
Okay. So in comparison to the Tesla Model S, potentially the closest competitor in all aspects to the Lucid Air is getting 4.02 miles per kilowatt hours compared to 4.58. So that's not just edging it out. That's fairly significantly edging it out. How did they pull this out of their buttock? How did they just go out and create something better than Tesla?
I don't know, but
you believe it?
I think they do have some of Tesla's engineers working for them. I'm not totally sure on that, but yeah, I think that there has been some Tesla employees have gone over to Lucid.
A new record low solar price bid, 1.3 cents per kilowatt hour in Portugal, beating a record set in Abu Dhabi in June by 0.4 cents.
Yeah, I think we talked about it the last time that record was set. So, that's very interesting. I wonder if we're going to be hitting the bottom pretty soon. Can it get any cheaper than this?
My sources, Brian, say yes.
Okay.
That is going to continue to fall because there are going to be improvements in technology, efficiency, for example, that will get that better. 42 Target stores may host Tesla superchargers. Do they have an adequate restaurant, Brian Stockton?
I've never been to a Target restaurant, so I don't really know. Have you?
I don't know. But I remember when Target came to Canada for like a year and a half before it got its ass kicked, that people were talking about the Target restaurant.
Oh, is that right?
But, I never really understood that. I mean, the Bay restaurant was one thing. I remember I racked up a large amount of food there on my Bay credit card. The European passenger plug-in vehicle market is on fire in spite of the pandemic, having scored over 113,000 registrations in July. That is 113,000 gas vehicles off the road in July. Year over year, that's 213% over year. The highest growth rate in 5 years. So in spite of the pandemic, in spite of most auto sales, not all auto sales, most auto sales are down significantly this year. And this is not only up, it's way up. So God help us, we are moving forward. Am I wrong?
Well, there's, two different markets here. There's the fossil fuel car market, and then there's the green electric car market. And one of them is shrinking and one of them's growing. So I think it just makes sense that it would continue. There's growth there just because the entire market for EVs is growing and will keep growing until 2030 when our podcast ends and we'll have solved climate change.
That's going to be a hell of a show when we do our last one in 2030. Oh. I think we should start booking talent now. I'm thinking the Stones.
Yeah. They'll still be around.
From the Bismarck Tribune in North Dakota. I know you'd like this because I know you like North Dakota things. Huge existing North Dakota long-distance transmission line is going unused. This is a DC transmission line, not an AC, because of solar moratoriums and wind restriction put in place with the hope that coal will be revitalized. To me, Brian, this is the stupidest thing in the whole stinking world where people are saying, no. They're plugging their ears and saying, everything's fine. Coal's going to come back. People, look at the numbers. Look at the graphs. I'm not a mathematical genius. I can't even say it. But if you look at a trend map that says solar and everything is going down and coal is actually inching upwards in price per kilo, why do you want to save something like that pollutes the world and kills your neighbors?
So you're saying they built a whole transmission line and they're not using it? No,
I'm saying the transmission line that they built a while ago is going unused.
Well, why did they build it then?
Because ostensibly to take cheap coal power from place to place and natural gas power from North Dakota. So the latest development occurred in early August when commissioners in McLean County, where Coal Creek is located, enacted a 2-year moratorium on solar farms. Yep, no solar farms for 2 years.
Yikes.
You think we're backwoods. I mean, that makes me so angry. And that follows a similar moratorium in neighbor Mercer County on applications for wind farm permits, as well as McLean's decision in March to exact zoning restrictions on wind farms. So they're doing everything they can to stop green energy in the hopes that politicians are so greased up by the funding that they get from energy producers like that they'll actually do really stupid things like that.
Yeah, but they won't ultimately stop the progress.
Plant-based foods are up 29% over the last 2 years. Categories of these new food items include, and this is separate from my Toby Seba research, milk, meat, ice cream, frozen novelty creamers, yogurt, butter, cheese, tofu, beverages, condiments, dressings, mayo, and eggs. Plant-based in all those categories. Did you know about that?
No, I did not.
Well, that's the deal there, and I'm quite surprised by that. I'm a little behind, and I'm going to have to look into that more because we haven't been seeing. We frankly don't know everything that's going on in that, but so precision fermentation is still around.
Probably time to head down to the health food store and see what they've got these days.
Canyon just unveiled a crazy awesome electric pedal car, basically a 4-wheeled recumbent bike that looks like a car, and it's totally enclosed. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't.
Well, it's like a little car that you pedal that's entirely encased as an electric e-bike, okay? So it's like a recumbent bike that literally looks like a car and has a little thing like that slides forward like as a fighter jet or something, and I don't know if it has lights or signal lights like that, but I honestly don't know what to think about it. But it's weird, but it would be cozy. It wouldn't have a heater in there because you're not going to have the energy on an e-bike to heat them. Unilever, the household products company, is investing 1.3 billion euros to remove fossil fuels from its cleaning products by 2030. Again, 2030. We should call this show 2030.
Yeah.
Instead of petrochemicals, the products would substitute constituents created from plants and other biological sources. It's actually kind of depressing. Yes, they're going to do that, but their carbon emissions really aren't going to be eliminated by any stretch. But that part of it, the fact that petrochemicals aren't required, because we hear that a lot here in oil country in Western Canada that, well, you know, your cell phone's made out of oil. We've literally had our premiers say crap like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, yes, and that's fine. In fact, it's probably better to make things than to burn
Mm-hmm.
to make things. But, yeah, anyway. And finally, Brian Stockton, Hyundai hired K-pop sensation to do a song for their signature electric vehicle, the Ioniq. And I can't believe they got what's the name of the band? BTS.
Okay.
I can't believe they got BTS. I know they're a Korean company, but how do you just own BTS, the biggest thing in the world right now? And they did a whole song, and I've listened to it. And it's weird, but and B, I'm thinking, like, let's criticize it so that the K-pop army comes and disses our show, and then our ratings double. But here's a clip. Feel the beat. Yeah, it does. Takes me there. Takes me everywhere I want to go. The lyrics, of course, are laughable. But hopefully they won't sue us for playing that 10-second clip. But yes, BTS is hey, I don't know what the logic behind this, or how many billions of dollars they had to spend to get BTS to make a song about their freaking car, but it's an electric car. And Godspeed to all those little kids who are now learning about electric cars through K-pop. What do you think?
I'm all for it. I don't really know anything about K-pop, but
neither do I.
I'll take your word for it that they're a huge deal in Korea. So, yeah, it seems like a positive thing.
All right, Brian, that wraps up this week's show. We went a bit long, but what a show it was. And I'm going to end with some good news, Brian, if you don't mind. Walmart is cutting emissions equal to 4 times those of Denmark out of the supply chain in just 3 years. New UK law to curb deforestation. And petrochemical company PetroChina is going to cut emissions to 0 by 2050. And the $91 billion asset manager out there dumps oil stocks. So these are all good news, and we'll see you again next week on the Clean Energy Show.
Yeah, see you next week.